Welcome to another episode of DD on the Spot. As always, I'm your host, Ryan Johnson. And before I get into it with our guests here today, I'd like to remind everyone that if you enjoy this content, to please give a like and subscribe down below. I'd greatly appreciate it. We have Jaclyn Baker on the podcast, coming to us all the way from the Big Apple, that is New York City. I've actually been there like 4 or 5 times, and each time I'm like, I do not understand why people could live that crowded together. But hey, some people just love that. But she's an IFBB Fitness Pro. She was in the last 2 Olympias where she placed 4th and 5th respectively. And most importantly, she's our current guest, and she's going to share some health and fitness advice and talk about her journey. But I'm just really excited to have her on because we haven't had that many fitness pros on. But most importantly, she's our current guest. Jaclyn, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you so much for having me, Ryan.
Well, I got to ask, first of all, because I love torturing myself, what is the weather like in New York City today?
Oh, it's rough. I think it's like 29 and very windy.
Yeah, it's like 10 degrees here, and we're supposed to get some snow tomorrow night. But yeah, so I mean, we're both in misery but I don't want to get too far into that because we lose half of the viewers from the southern states just by talking about the weather because they just get depressed for us. So before we do that, why don't you give us your backstory on what really inspired and motivated you to get in shape and how that led to where you're at right now?
Okay, cool. Well, I grew up as a competitive dancer, and then I danced. I went to college for dance, and then I danced professionally for 10 years prior to bodybuilding. That's what led me to New York. Um, and so I danced for a couple of companies out here. I did some touring. And then I thought I was done dancing and was looking to get into something else. And my coach, who coaches me now, approached me and asked me if I'd ever thought of competing. I was just in the gym doing my little workout. And he asked me if I've ever thought of it. He was looking for someone to coach to kind of get back into the industry. He had been out for years. And so I researched him. People said, if you're going to do bodybuilding, do it with him. And I was like, okay. So I did my first show, which was Bev's Metropolitan Classic in 2015. I trained for 6 months prior to that. And I trained for figure. And I won both my classes. And then I went on, and my coach found out I was a former dancer and I had acrobatic skills. And so he was like, "Why don't we try fitness?" And I was like, "Meh, I think I'm done dancing, but if you really want me to." So I did fitness and figure for Universe the following nationals, and I ended up winning in fitness and coming in second in figure. And then I took off from fitness from there. So I turned pro in 2017. So this year is my third Olympia consecutive, my third year in the IFBB.
Wow, that's awesome. And I mean, one thing that I find that's so fascinating with, the bodybuilders that I have on is that a lot of the times, like, they have that genetics, ahead of time that, like, they could compete. Were you always like a stronger kid? Were you always a little bit more like developed muscular wise? Because I find that, 90% of the guests that I have on have that background. That's why they get asked, hey, you should be a bodybuilder.
I was, but in respect to the dance world, it wasn't really looked highly upon. I was told I really shouldn't do push-ups when everyone else does, or I should,
Hey,
I should
enjoy
be
that break then. Enjoy that break then. You just get to stand around while everyone else is
yeah,
doing them then. Yeah.
right. So it took me a long time to realize that my genetics were working for me now, as opposed to trying to play them down. So I was always athletic. I was always pretty muscular as a kid, and through my dance career, it wasn't really. I guess it wasn't really a positive as it is now. So it's nice to be rewarded for that.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I mean, that leads me perfectly into a myth that, we talked about briefly before we started recording. And, it's gotten better the last 5 years due to Instagram, but there's still so many women that have that fear that, hey, if I go and I lift weights, I'm going to get super bulky, super quick. And it's like, first of all, if you have those genetics, I would, hook you up in a lab and I try to steal some of your genetics because everyone wants that. And, it's just ridiculous but I still hear that. And, it's just something that I think, like I said, it's gotten better, but it's still out there. But did you ever have that fear when you were getting started? Because, obviously having that pounded in your brain that, like, oh, you are too big, like you need to, like, slow things down. And even if you didn't have that fear, I bet you still hear that all the time from people that you're either like training with or people that How do you like to respond to that?
So first off, I didn't really have that fear when I started training. I'm not really sure if by then I had realized that that's not the reality, or I was just focused and I was like, this is what I'm going to do. And I want my body to look a certain way. Whereas I didn't really like the way I looked prior, so I was always kind of fighting with that. Um, and I think that's common with a lot of people also, is they don't really like the way they look, but they don't want to look at the other way, but they don't really know what the balance is. I actually really dislike the term bulk or bulky or bulking, or I just there's no science behind it. So I always try when people say that word or use it, I try to educate them on what they actually mean. And my analogy is like if you take a bed and you have a comforter on the bed and you stuff rocks underneath it, you're going to look bulky, which the bed would be the fat and the rocks would be the muscle. If you stuff the rocks underneath and while you're putting the rocks under, roll the comforter back, you're going to look lean and my other least favorite word, toned, what people say, which is not the correct use
That needs to
of
be
the word.
erased from the English language. Whenever I hear that, I'm just like, "What do you mean by that?" And they're like, "Oh, I just want to lose some weight and lose." I was like, "Well, what do you think's going to be underneath that? You think you're just going to be all skin and bone?" It's like, "You can try that." I mean, but it's like, "No, when you say tone, you say you want to put on." And those are the same people that say, "I don't want to put on muscle. I just want to get toned." And I was like, "That's the same thing."
Right, right. Well, toned means a taut muscle. It doesn't even mean what they think it means. So I just really try to educate people in a polite, matter of fact way. And some usually it sticks, or they're kind of like a little bit of a light bulb.
Yeah, no, and that's great that you're doing that. And one of the things that I love to add on to that, because I mean, this is one thing that impacts women so much positively, and it impacts men as well, though. But for women, just that confidence boost that working out gives you. I mean, we have heard hundreds of stories on this podcast of women who they've been able to make life changing decisions, or it's help them become more assertive, or it's that one thing that you can take from the gym and use to impact every single aspect of your life. How have you personally taken that confidence boost that working out's given you and used it to impact your life?
Well, I think going back to my dancing days when I was kind of ridiculed for my physique a lot, whereas now I'm rewarded for it. Um, Both sides, obviously, I was being judged for my physique, but they're in a little bit of a different realm. And I think that in turn, it made me feel stronger. It made me happier. Made me like getting dressed in the morning. There are all those things that kind of are daily activities that I think a lot of people put their clothes on in the morning and they feel kind of crappy. I don't really feel that way. So I think bodybuilding helped me learn that.
Well, when I was, putting on a little bit of COVID weight, I always just went to sleep with clothes on because I didn't even want to, get down to. I always had to have like a sweater on or something like that because I don't even want to look at it. I'll just deal with that. But yeah, I mean, this is so much more of a mental sport and a mental journey than it is a physical journey. That's the main point that I love to drive in because, I mean, so many people are going to come up to you and probably say like, "Oh, Jaclyn, you look amazing," but they're not going to realize just the mental change that this sport entails as well and this lifestyle. What has the mental journey been like for you? Because I mean, not that many people are aware that this mental journey. I mean, it's 100 times more important. And you can have the genetics of a Greek god basically, but if you don't have the mental aspect to it, you're not going to have that much going for you.
Yeah, I think my whole this prep for during COVID up to Olympia this year, I kept saying mind game strong. Like that was something that I said to myself because I don't know how people know, but like New York City was locked down. We had no gyms. I was training outside on the street. I was training in my apartment with three sets of dumbbells and some bands. So my whole mentality was mind game strong. Like you can do it. I With the food aspect, I think a lot of people that's a lot of mind games too. What I tell people, and what I tell myself is food will always be there. There's never a shortage of bagels or pizza, or it's always going to be there tomorrow. We're fortunate that we live that way, but I think sometimes people are like, "Oh, they had free bagels at work today. I had to have one." Like, well, when have you ever not been able to get a bagel? It's different. Maybe you're traveling in Italy or you're somewhere in another country and you want to taste the food but everyday life, you don't have to have the free bagel. So I think that's a lot of mind game too. And I challenge myself a lot. Um, as far as food and workouts go, can I go further with cardio? Can I skip a whole day of working out without feeling guilty? Because rest is so important. Could I have what I call a free meal or a refeed meal in the morning and then go back to my meals at night instead of having a free meal at night and or in the morning and then going and eating crap all day long? So it's just I kind of try to challenge myself wearing when I can.
Yeah, and so let me guess, you were that one person who I know in New York, like they had those low ceilings when you're walking down the street for some buildings. Were you that one person like doing pull-ups and muscle ups on like those little bars that they have there basically then to do your workout? Because
I don't do pull-ups, but
oh yeah, because when I was when I remember when I was walking through there, I was like, God, this could be like a jungle gym workout if you really wanted to, if you were like really into that. Like, yeah.
yeah, I called myself the crazy band lady because I had there's trash cans outside the city that have like gates around them. If you haven't been to the city, it's just like you're building trash cans and then they have like a gate. So I would wrap all my bands up there and I would do a full workout. And I mean, I'm sure people thought I was nuts, but I just couldn't work out in my apartment at the time. I didn't have the space and we were just confined to our space for so long. I had to get outside. Um, so I just made do. And my coach was really good. He wrote me up a plan for my stoop and my bands and the sidewalk, and I just did it.
And that's great. And I mean, yeah, I had to move back in with my parents because of COVID, and they have a decent setup downstairs, so I was lucky with that. But I'd love to talk genetics too on this podcast because I mean, so many people are on social media and I hear this all the time. Oh my God, I want his arms, I want her abs, I want their back. People just don't understand that you can only be the best version of yourself. I don't know how many times I wanted to shake down people and be like, you don't know how they got to that look. You don't know whether it's through water manipulation or all the other stuff that they do before shows. I mean, and that look is not sustainable too. That's another thing that we'll talk about because people do not understand that. But whenever someone first gets started in the gym, they always have that one body part that really, really takes off that they don't have to train as much. And they have that one body part that just lags behind that they have to train to oblivion. For me, my back, just because I had jobs all throughout college of working in warehouses and loading boxes where, you either got a really nice back, you quit, but I'm 6'3", so my legs also are just absolutely shot where, I mean, I could train them every single day. They wouldn't don't even get me started on calves. I could inject pure muscle in my calves and I could do 10,000 calf raises a day and they wouldn't take off. But what were those body parts for you when you were getting started?
I would have to say my shoulders are. I have good genetics for shoulders for sure. I'm very small.
I was surprised you were able to fit that jacket on.
I'm very small framed, but I was able to put a lot of size on my shoulders and my upper body pretty quickly. My back too. The way my coach trains back definitely helps. He's very creative in the sense of certain angles, and it's just hitting the body part from the angle that it grows, and it stimulates it better. I would say my weak body part are my hamstrings for sure. Um, Being a dancer, I never trained a hamstring in my entire life. I mean, I didn't even know how to connect with my hamstrings because I was so hypermobile and everything I knew was flexibility. So for me to feel that tightness in my hamstring, I still don't like it to this day. I hate training hamstrings. I shouldn't use that word. I just like training hamstrings. I just don't, for 30 years dancing and having my legs be able to come, up towards my head, the idea of them being tight doesn't feel good to me. So we're working on my legs.
Well, I am shocked by that because the moment that you said that you're a dancer, I was like, "Oh God!" When I asked the body part question, she's gonna say like legs, and I'm gonna be like, "Oh geez." But yeah, I mean, it goes to show that and plus when you're dancing, I mean, that's a whole different workout in and of itself. Where I mean, that's just the body type for it. But yeah, and I love asking that because it does show that like everyone's different. I mean, if someone were to follow you on Instagram and be like, I'm gonna train just like she does and do all. First of all, if I train just like you, I'm a lot taller than you, so the results would be vastly different for me. So yeah, it just goes to show that I mean, you have to figure out what works best for you. And what was that experience like for you when you were getting started, sort of figuring out what worked best for you? Because it's just hit or miss for so many people. And like we said before, if you walk up to someone and say, what do you train for that body part? It looks amazing. What works best for them 99% of the time isn't going to work as good for you.
Yeah, it's a lot of trial and error. I was named a robot by my coach, so I'll let him coin that term. But whatever he tells me, pretty much I follow. I ask questions as to why we're doing things so I can educate myself and learn why, and he explains it. But all my training, he does. So he's worked with me since 2015, and I follow his workouts. And when we're not training together, I know my program and what I'm supposed to be doing when I'm by myself. That's not to say I don't do things, on my own or exercises that I like, but my program is from him, and I just follow it.
Yeah, well, and again, everyone get a trainer too. That's one thing that I think if you really want to get serious about this. Now, unless you have like that background like I had where you were playing all these sports, or the background like you had where you were in dance and you kind of had a good knowledge. If you wanted to be just like your basic, in shape person, if you don't want to take things serious, but if you do, get a trainer. I've cringed so many times that I've heard some of our guests say, like, "Oh, I just trained myself for the first couple of shows," and I was like, "Oh God." Like that must have been really hard. So yeah, that the trainer really does make all the difference. But nutrition is something that isn't talked about as much as it should be. It's talked about, a decent amount, but it's 80 to 90% of the results that you see. What were some of the big nutritional changes that you made when you really started to take things seriously?
Um, I always ate healthy, or what I thought was healthy. Um, I would say much more protein than I ever ate now. But that's not to say that I like eat like I think some people overdo it. I had a much more carb heavy diet, but what I thought was healthy, like maybe it was like a salad with a sandwich or something, but it wasn't necessarily that high in protein. It ended up being more carb fat heavy. Um, I would say that I'm a little bit of an anomaly where I can put on muscle on a very low calorie diet, unfortunately. Um, so it's in one realm, it's good because I do have the genetics to put on muscle from my body type and a woman easily. But in the other side, I don't lose muscle when we're dieting down. So you can really push me, which can be a little bit it's hard because I can function on low calories and your face.
So you basically have
and
the you basically have the
I
dream you have the dream gym bro body basically.
Yes, but I don't lose body fat
Yeah.
easily, which is the issue. So we're dropping calories and I'm keeping muscle and my body's not saying we're starving. So my coach has really had to get creative with me, and I'm thankful again that he's experimented and thought outside the box because the normal uh, bro diets don't work for me. I will put on a lot of body fat uh, or put on too much muscle for my physique and what I want to look like for bodybuilding and for real life. So what I call real life.
So like if you really wanted to, do you think that you could probably how far do you think that you could go like in the classes in bodybuilding? Like if you really said to yourself, like, I don't care what happens, I'm just gonna get as do you think that you could probably go all the way up to physique with just the amount of muscle that you can put on?
Yes.
Wow.
And I think in figure world, the small waist would be hard for me because I'm built a little bit straighter and I guess you could say boxier. But as far as muscle mass goes, yeah.
God, let's change genetics right now. I'm willing to trade. I'm willing to trade. I'll even pay you for it. That's just, oh my God, yeah. And you're one of those genetic freak guests that we have on that I always say they're like the one percenters where it's just. But yeah, that's a good problem to have. But yeah, like you said, lowering that body fat though, that's got to be a pain. So what is your relationship with cardio, right? Because that's my trigger word where I hate cardio more than life itself. Where and when I say cardio, I mean like the running. Like I could walk on a treadmill for 8 hours a day and I'd be fine with it. But what is it like for you, especially since you do need to do a hell of a lot more cardio, I assume, than like the average person when it comes to bodybuilding?
I do. So again, with my coach, we've gone through trial and error. We've done like really hard hit cardio. We've done low intensity steady state. We've, broken it up into 3 sessions. What works for me, and I do cardio all year round also by choice. I think it's heart health. I've done cardio my whole life. I wouldn't ever stop, whether it's 20, 30 minutes a day or 2 hours a day. I just think it's important. So right now I do about 3 sessions of like a plyometric interval cardio where it's just body weight, jumping jacks, up mountain climbers, those sort of exercises. And then the rest of it's steady state, stairs or treadmill. Um, I also get injured and have a lot of injuries. So cardio, too much cardio or too much repetition plays into those injuries a lot. So I'm always trying to switch it up. Like today, I did the stairs, I did a little bit of the treadmill, and a little bit of the bike, and I just kind of hop around. So it can be anywhere from 30 minutes a day to 3 hours a day.
So does being injury prone also sort of affect your training as well? Because I know one of the biggest myths that I love to bust is that so many people think that bodybuilders are like power lifters where they just lift heavy like all the time and they're like, oh, that must be how they look like it. No, it's for aesthetics, but especially for someone like you, I mean, lifting heavy might not be the best for you. So have you found that you tend to normally just like to do just for repetitions, basically?
Yeah, well, I always joke that I look strong. And what you going back to your pull-ups, in the beginning when I first started training with my coach, I was like, but I want to do 10 pull-ups. He was like, but you don't need to do 10 pull-ups. I was like, but I want to. He's like, you just need to look like you can do them. It's like, okay, I get it. So yeah, it does play into my training. I lift moderate to heavy. I have had a lot of lower body injuries, hip, knee, ankles, heels. So
Do you think that's from
I
a lot of the dancing that you did?
100%. Yeah, my hip injury is from 10 years ago. I broke my heel. I've sprained my ankle numerous times. So a lot of it is overuse. I've beaten up my body, but I'm also thankful that my body got me to this point. So with my legs, I think that's also why my legs are lagging behind a little bit because I have had so many lower body injuries. So we've had to work around that. This is actually the first improvement season that I'm not injured. So coming off of a show, I've been pretty beat up after most of my shows, which is not uncommon for for bodybuilding and or the fitness division. I mean, the amount of injuries we endure is pretty high. I try to take care of my body as much as possible. I take ice baths. I see a physical therapist, a massage therapist. So
Yeah, and well, you guys have the both worlds thing where you got to do your posing and you got to do your routine. So one thing that I was the most surprising for me was that for so many of these athletes, posing is the hardest thing for them. It's harder than their nutrition. It's harder than their working out. I compare it now to being a perfect driver where you can be a great driver. You can never be a perfect driver. You can be a great poser. You can never be a perfect poser. It's always ever evolving. And you have to do the routine as well. But what has your experience been like with the posing?
I think the posing was very strange for me in the beginning. I couldn't connect the same way. As I got more muscle and I was able to connect more, it was better. And I'm still, perfecting that. And worked I work hard on it to try to make it to really make my body look the best it can look. When it comes to being on stage, though, that to me comes very natural. So I mean, I get normal nerves, but I'm not like freaked out about being on stage in the posing round. I actually really love it. There's something about being on stage for me that is exhilarating, whereas a lot of people get super, super nervous. But the posing it's different. It's hard.
Especially having that background in dance too. I mean, I could have bet that you would be okay with going on stage because that's an answer that we've had from a lot of people that either did dance or something that's really performance based. But I mean, the routines, I've always just been fascinated by that because it's like these people are so dieted down and these people are so almost malnourished when it comes to this. And you're expecting them to do like one arm push ups and to do like all these crazy things that they do. But is there like a criteria that they sort of send to everyone of like, this is what we want to see in your routine? Or is it sort of just you can make up whatever you want? Or what's the process like in making those routines?
So the criteria for the fitness division of all across the board, we have four skills that have to be in the routine. And that's a push up of any kind, a high kick, a split, and then a straddle hold, which is a middle split holding yourself off the floor. So those are the four things. Other than that, you have you have barely any limitations really. There are things that they judge us on: strength, endurance, performance, entertainment aspect, maybe storyline if you have one. So they are judging us on other aspects of it, but the only requirements are those four things.
Well, and I'd be 2 for 4 because there's no way in hell I'm doing a splits or I'm doing the last one. So, I just tell them, out of the gate, I'm gonna get half of these right. But is your training just a lot of push-ups too? Because like if you were able to do that low of a body fat and on that stage, is that really just a big chunk of what you do? Because for me, if I had to go on that stage, I'd be like, okay, I'm doing like 200 push-ups a day, basically, and just to be able to make sure that I can
No,
do it no matter
not
what.
actually. I don't really do push-ups often at all.
Wow.
Back to my injuries, I've got both injuries, so it always plays for me. It always plays around my injuries and how can we work it around that. So I do a lot of stability work to help me with that, whether it's like Bosu balancing or um, any kind of one arm workout, one arm exercises to help me with stability. I do a lot of that and a lot of core work to strengthen me for the push ups.
Well, and I do have to ask this because I would get torn apart in the comments if I didn't, because the moment that you said that shoulders were something that really took off for you, that's for the women that I've had on, that's the number one body part where they're like, "Oh my god, I need to it sucks. I can't really get them to grow." And yes, so she's fine. I bet you hear that all the time, especially from women. But so I do have to ask because I would get torn apart, just people being like, "Why didn't you ask her how she got her shoulders like that? I want to get shoulders like that too." So what do you do for shoulders to really get them to pop? Because I mean, genetics go only so far. I mean, you do have to work them in order to get them to grow.
Yeah, I really make sure to hit them from different angles, but the angle that the muscle grows. So for a lateral raise, I usually come across my body, and so that way you're stretching out the full deltoid and then coming up full range of motion, and you're getting a little bit more range of motion than you would if your arm is straight. Here, you're stretching out the muscle and then fully contracting it. So I do that. I do some cable work. I do a little bit of some different exercises that normal people, or I guess the standard wouldn't see. Like I don't really, not that there's anything wrong with it, but I never do an Arnold press. Never have. So there's a lot of things that are like standard that I don't necessarily do. But I'm always making sure to fully extend the muscle before I contract. So whether it's a slight incline back, so that if I'm doing a front raise, I'm coming up and I'm a maximum stretch of the muscle prior to lifting. I do some cable presses, but instead of pressing straight up, I'm coming across my face. So that way I'm really going with the front of the shoulder. So if you're coming this way, that's where I'm working right here, and I'm just keeping this fixed position, kind of like a windshield wiper. So it's a lot of different exercises that my coach has come up with that hit the shoulders in a different way than just pressing or just lifting up to the side.
I'm actually gonna start trying that now because that's some of the best. That's I've never heard of anyone doing it like that, and I'm actually gonna try that, and I'll get back to everyone on how that goes. And for everyone out there, give that a try as well. But yeah, the three tricep.
Don't spend 2 hours on shoulders. I can
Oh,
tell you
oh
that
yeah,
much.
oh yeah. I mean, I
I'm
have
all about being efficient.
yeah.
It's all about working efficient.
Oh, I have some friends who I warn them because I know that they have that personality where I'm like, if you start working out, they're gonna be those people that go in there for like 3 hours a day, and then they get tired and tire themselves out after a week, and they're like, yeah, I can't do this anymore. And I was like, well, no crap. I mean, you got to really. So, but yeah, and again, the three heads of the shoulders. I mean, that's one thing that people got to realize too with shoulders, where it's like if a lot of times people say like, oh, I want to get nice shoulders, and they're like, oh, I'm gonna work out shoulders today. And I was like, what part of the shoulder are you gonna work? The shoulder, and it's yeah. So it's like you got to realize that there's more than just one part there. But yeah, so but that's great as well. And when you first got that invitation to your first Olympia, what was that feeling like for you? Because for so many people, I mean, they spend almost their entire lives just to be able to get that chance to step on that stage. But what was that like for you when you realized, like, oh my God, I'm going to actually compete in the Olympia?
It was very surreal, but I didn't even know that's what happened till I came off stage at the Tampa Pro. I placed second, and I was kind of bummed that I placed second because I thought I had first, and I didn't realize that I had qualified for Olympia. I wasn't like I was bummed because I wanted first, obviously, and I thought I had it, but I was ecstatic to place second. And I placed second next to Jenny Worth, who's like a legend in our sport. So it was I was honored. But I came off and I was like, okay, well, I got second, and my coach was like, well, you just qualified for Olympia, and I was like, wait, what do you mean? And I kind of it couldn't wrap my head around it, and I was still new. I mean, I'd only been competing for 3 years. I didn't really even know how it worked as far as qualifying for Olympia. I thought you had to win a show. I wasn't really educated enough on the point system and all of that. So I was very shocked, and it was very surreal. I was very honored.
And then what is that moment like too when you step out on that stage? Because I mean, we've heard so many times that people are like, yeah, I've been following some of these people that I'm competing against, for so long, and I'm finally stepping on that stage with them. What is that mindset like for you? Because I know that you said, going on stage, that's a fun part for you, but going on that stage where you're like going on with your idols and stuff, what is your mindset like there? Because I mean, when it comes to soaking it all in, I mean, that seems like that'll be the one opportunity where you really gotta be able to do that.
I think I had the same mindset I would for any show. Um, go up there and win. That's my mindset for everything. Like I never, I mean, being a newbie and I was happy to just be there, but my mindset is always go there and do your best and win. So I definitely took it all in. I kind of was just looking around like, is this, am I really here? Um, and just try to enjoy and learn and observe all the people who had been there before me and just enjoy the moment.
Absolutely, and especially you need to really especially enjoy the moment with this last year because of everything that everyone's gone through just to be able to get to that Olympia. But how is this Olympia different from previous ones? Because I mean, yeah, there was a limited crowd. I mean, the safety precautions. I've talked to Hel Trevino, who did the women's bodybuilding at the Olympia, and they were just talking about how different that was too. But for fitness in particular, how different was this year as opposed to the other 2 years that you were there?
Um, well, there were a lot of things for me. I come from what I call mask land now. So coming from New York to Florida was very different. And I think
For
for
anyone not in the United States, Florida, they really didn't take this pandemic seriously at all. Like they shut down for probably like 2 days, and then they're like, "Yeah, everyone, no mask. You don't have to do anything." So I'm just explaining that to everyone so that they can understand where she's coming from. Yeah.
yeah, and here I can't leave my apartment without a mask. So going to Florida was a little daunting for me. I actually really liked it being in Florida. I'm from Florida originally, so it was nice to be there. I think there was some kind of relief by everyone when they were there. I feel like everyone was kind of like, we made it, we did it. Even before stepping on stage, there was that feeling of like, we got here. Because we didn't really know if it was going to happen, if there was going to be an audience. There's all these things that were maybes the whole time. They switched it from Vegas to Orlando. First, they switched the date, then they switched it to Orlando. So I think there was a lot of um, unknowns that played into prep for this year. And I feel like everyone who got there and did it, there was kind of just that mentality of we got here.
Well, and how was that prep? I mean, because I know you talked about like you had to do like your own workouts and stuff, but how was that like for you doing that for an extended period of time? Because a lot of people that I've talked to, like we've had some that have done like 11-month preps because of that, and the body is not meant to be in a prep for that long a period of time. But how are you able to sort of, if you didn't fall into that hole, how are you able to? But if you did fall into that hole, I mean, what was that like?
I was fortunate to already be qualified for this year's Olympia since I placed fourth last year. And I was tentatively planning on doing either the Tampa Pro or the Phoenix Pro prior. And then when Olympia got pushed and all the shows were kind of out of whack, and there were only like 4 shows for fitness women to qualify for, I decided I wasn't doing Tampa. And um, and then so I'm always year round on a meal plan. Like I said, I had a little bit more leeway, and everything here was such a disaster that I would, have drinks with friends and enjoy life as much as possible on Zoom, rather not really with friends. and uh, and then they moved Olympia to December, and so we knew we had a little bit more time. So I started prepping, and I like I said, my prep's just kind of just like cleaning up my food, and it's not like all of a sudden I have a 16-week prep. I'm always in communication with my coach. So we cleaned things up, started to diet down a little bit. Then kind of I would say 12 weeks, 10 weeks, cleaned it up a little bit more, and then up the cardio and stuff. I find the biggest challenge for me was the mask. And meaning I had to wear a mask throughout all of my workouts, including my fitness routine rehearsal. So I only ran my routine twice without a mask prior to being on stage for Olympia. Um, so that was very, very hard for me. Um, yeah.
Well, which because I mean, a lot of people don't realize that your face is probably the biggest thing that they're looking at if you're smiling or if you're having a good time. So if you're doing that with a mask on, you can't tell like how's my smile looking, how's it looking. I don't want to look like I'm like one of those psychos with one of those weird smiles where they look at it and they're like, wow, this person's possessed. So that's one thing that that's what I tell people. I was like, people do not understand that your jaw muscles are probably the most sore thing after these shows because you have to smile the whole time and really put that presentation off. So yeah.
For me, that part I wasn't worried about. It was more the breathing. Like if it would be if you're running like a 2 minute sprint. No one sprints for 2 minutes, but if you're sprinting for 2 minutes with the mask on, it would be pretty difficult. And going upside down, and the mask, unfortunately, it blocks your vision a little bit when you're looking down. So that was really tough for me. I think that was actually one of the most challenging things.
Yep. Well, and I mean, going into that, what I was talking to you about before, where I mean, so many people don't understand that that look that you present on stage is not 24/7 sustainable. And I mean, I think it's because so many people watch these weight loss shows and they're like, oh my God, so and so lost, like 150 pounds and they were able to keep the weight off. So they just assume that, like, oh, bodybuilders, they work out even harder than these people. They should be able to be just like the weight loss people where they able to keep these results. And they just don't understand what goes into these shows when it comes to just the manipulations and how people don't get that you are at your weakest when you're on that stage. Like I always said, if they were to have like a strength contest, people would just be shocked at like, oh wow, they can only do that many push-ups or they can only do, like that many. So yeah, it's just one of those things that isn't brought up that much. But what was that like for you when you first realized that, like, hey, how great I look right now, it's only, gonna last for maybe a couple of days at best. And eventually I'm gonna have to put on weight and, just to be able to get better. And has that gotten easier for you to accept that as your career's gone on?
It's definitely easier. I think it's still very hard. I think once you see yourself and you see all, your abs are just out all the time and your face is really sunken.
You got the skeleton face.
Yeah, you kind of get used to seeing that, and anything more than that looks what I call fluffy. Um, but I know what's healthy for me and what's unhealthy for me. And I reverse diet very, very slowly, where I increase food very slowly. I decrease cardio very slowly. I am not one of those people who just go and eat everything right after a show for weeks and weeks and weeks and then start a reverse diet.
And put
I
on and put on 40 pounds in a week, basically. We've heard stories like
Yeah,
that, yeah.
I mean, I don't feel comfortable like that. That's when I think psychologically it gets to me. So I've learned that over the years, and I know what makes me feel good and what makes me happy day to day, and that's what I focus on the most. And again, it goes back to food will always be there. But I think looking at yourself in one realm and then seeing yourself gain weight is very strange because 90% of the world is always trying to lose weight. So it's hard. It's very hard. I always say when you're prepping for a show, it should be at least 12 to 16 weeks prior and then 6 to 8 weeks after. So I don't think coaches should just say, here's a 12-week prep and this is how long I'm going to prep you. It should be minimum of 20 weeks, 12, and then 8 after, give or take the person and the.
Yeah, and I just compare it to like starting your own business where you got to spend money to make money. You got to put on weight if you want to put on muscle. I mean, those two unfortunately just go hand in hand. But on top of that, I mean, the one thing that I think people who are in the gym a lot struggle with a lot more than maybe like a newbie is rest days. And you talked about it before. I mean, rest days, it's one of the hardest things even for me too. Like I'm on a rest day today where I just even right now, when as you're talking, sometimes I'm thinking about like, oh, I should work out today. I should like do something. I should just get on it something. But how do you mentally deal with rest days? Because I mean, when you're that into this lifestyle, it is so hard to convince yourself that like, no, you need it for your body, even if your body's telling you 100% like, I need this rest day.
Yeah, I'm pretty good at it actually. Depending on where I am in my training, I know my body responds well to it. I know that I need it. I need it to recover. I need it to grow. I need it to be better than I was the day before, the week before. So I always have at least one complete off day and at least 1 or 2 days where I don't lift. So maybe I just do some cardio, or vice versa. I lift without cardio, but I'm for the most part good at it. Sometimes I do get a little antsy and I'm like, and especially right now with being so locked down, it's like I might as well just go do some cardio or go, do some abs and lift a little bit. So
Yeah, it's definitely a struggle. And I mean, the most important thing in this lifestyle that isn't talked about at all is sleep. I mean, I don't care what anyone says. If you say that that's not the most important thing, I always tell people pull an all-nighter and then try and go and work out and then see what happens. I did that twice in college and I lasted halfway through and I'm like, screw this. I'm done. I can't do this. I'm going back to my room. But especially when you're in bodybuilding, sleep becomes, 10 times more important than it would if you're just not competing at all. And, you know, I've said one of the best feelings in the world is after you get that proper amount of sleep after a long, hard workout, you wake up feeling like a superhero. But what is the amount of sleep that you try to get? Because the variety of answers I heard in this podcast, I mean, some people it's like 8 hours they're good with. Some people it's like they can go off 4 hours. Some people need 10 hours. And how are you able to achieve that? Because in this day and age with technology, especially, editing these podcasts, sometimes I'll look down and be like, oh my God, it's 2 a.m. I should probably get to bed. But what does your sleep look like and how have you been able to do that? Because I mean, everyone needs help, I think, with sleep nowadays because everyone's just so underslept, in my opinion, personally.
Yeah, as goes along with my training and my eating, I'm very regimented. I put my phone away at 9 or 9:30 every night. I use a real alarm clock to wake up, not my phone. My phone stays in my kitchen at night. I go in my bedroom. So my everyone knows 9 or 9:30 during the week you can't get a hold of me. My phone, it's not near me. So I usually put my phone away around 9, and I get in bed around 9:30, 10, and then I wake up anywhere from 4 to 5. Weekends usually it's like 6:30. I'm a pretty good sleeper. I don't usually, knock on something, I don't have trouble falling asleep. So I would say I get a good 6 hours, 7 hours. I think that's my sweet spot, 6 to 8 hours. Anything more than eight, I feel groggy and I don't feel good. If I go to bed at 10, I naturally will wake up around 6:30. Um,
Yeah, it's amazing what your body can get used to. Because I used to have a thing where one night I'd get like 2 hours of sleep and then I'd sleep like 12 hours the next day, and I had that schedule for like almost 6 months working at UPS when I was there. I mean, just because they needed so many hours. But yeah, I mean, sleep, everyone. I mean, and especially if you're one of my best things is that put your phone away or your alarm at a spot where you have to get out of your bed to turn it off.
I personally don't think you should sleep with your phone near you, because if you wake up, you roll over for some reason and you check that phone. The second you check that phone, your brain then turns on to, what do I have to do tomorrow? Who texts me? Let me check Instagram. Did I get an email? And then you don't either, you can't fall back asleep, or you don't sleep as well because you're constantly thinking about all those things.
Oh, I couldn't have done it. I couldn't have said that better myself because especially with this podcast, I do, I'm a guilty as charged. I do sleep with my phone, normally it's like 2 feet away from me just because, and I cannot tell you, like 80 or 90 times, I'll have a guest on from either like the UK or some part of the world where they're like 6 hours ahead of me. I'll get a message at like 4 a.m. my time, just being like, oh yeah, I can come on the pod. And then I just can't fall asleep afterwards because yeah, you're right. You get up. So, but yeah, so I definitely need to get on that. But yeah, once I get all this podcast stuff figured out, even though I've been doing this for like 2.5 years, then I'll figure out a way where I can like just be able to sleep without it because yeah, that is a huge, huge, huge thing. But
Yeah, very important. I think it definitely helps.
yeah, absolutely. And a couple of the questions I love to ask before we wrap things up here. I mean, if someone were to walk up to you and say, Jaclyn, we made the decision, you can change one thing about the sport of bodybuilding and everyone would go along with it, what would be one thing that you would like to see changed?
Too.
That's fine. Give them both.
Equal pay across the board for all the categories, men and women. And I would love to see the fitness division scoring 50-50, 50 for our physique and 50 for our routine. Whereas if you don't know, our physique round is 1/3 of our score, and our routine round is 2/3 of our score.
So have there been instances where like everyone can agree like someone with not the best physique has won just because they're really good at their routine?
I don't think it's necessarily not the best physique, but it wouldn't be first place physique. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, routine can bring you up quite a bit. And it has helped me in the past 2 years, so I'm not knocking that at all. It's gotten me to where I place, top five both last year and
Let's make it
2019.
let's make it 75-25 then.
But I do wish that it was 50-50, because I really enjoy the physique portion and I've worked so hard on that. So I'd like it to be even.
So what's the total score that they do? Is it just like out of 10 that they give you or what's the scoring system like?
They have it's a little confusing to me. They have 7 judges and they place either 1 through 20, I believe it is, and then that's added up. They either give you like a 1, a 5, a 10, and then they add that up. So the routine rounds and the physique round are added together to make your final score.
Yeah, so that's too much math for me. Math was not my subject in school, so even thinking about that, I was like, yeah, I'll just trust they add that they add those numbers right. But yeah, I mean, it's just but it's just so great. And I mean, especially now that knowing that like you're this representation, especially on Instagram, of like positivity and stuff. How has that impacted you, knowing that like you really do help out people? Because so many people don't realize that a lot of these people do it for themselves to help out others and stuff. And because there's always that stigma of like, oh, there's the Instagram person who only does it just so that they can promote themselves. But what I found through this podcast is that the vast majority of the guests that I have on just do it just because they generally like to help people. But what is that feeling like for you, knowing that like you are helping people get better and improve their lives?
I mean, I'm honored to be able to do that, honestly, and I never would have thought of myself as that person. And my social media presence is just me. Like I don't use filters. I don't, talk in a funny voice. It's just really just me. Um, so I'm thankful that me being myself comes across and inspires people, because that is really one of the most important things to me, and it has been for years. I don't believe in being fake for social media or for any kind of presence. I believe in upholding a certain character, morale, all of that. But I am honored to be able to inspire people doing what I love and just being myself.
And that's great, and we need more people like that, honestly. And that's great what you're doing. And the last two questions, I mean, let's be honest. If you were to walk out in public, if you were to walk out in public during the summertime, where you're able to show a little bit more, I mean, you're not the average looking woman. I always say whenever bodybuilders go out in public, that's sort of like being a mini celebrity, just because of the attention that you normally draw. Where anytime people see something that's not of the normal, or at least what they think, they're just like, oh wow, that's different. What has that been like for you, sort of dealing with the fact that, I mean, when you walk out in public, especially when you're able to like show off a little bit, I mean, it really just is fascinating to me, like the reactions that people give a lot of times.
It's fascinating to me also. The positive and negative reactions. I try to focus on the positive. I have people who will stop me and they always comment on my shoulders and they say, "Oh, beautiful shoulders," or something like that. And I just say, "Thank you. I really appreciate it." And I think really taking that in and acknowledging that they are acknowledging my hard work is important for me to do, instead of just brushing it off. The negative makes me laugh. I mean, I've had people just stare, or people I walk by and like, "Oh my god, that girl has veins," or like anything. I've had a lot of comments. To me, it's funny. It's a good story for when I have two sisters. When I meet up with my sisters later, or text them, or it's always a good story. So I hopefully just try to focus on the positive compliments that I get, and really take them in and acknowledge that someone is complimenting me.
Which, I mean, I've talked to bodybuilders that have been here since like the 80s, and it's gotten so much better, I think, and that's great. I mean, and for the vast amount of guests, I mean, it is vastly more positive that they get the negative a lot of the times. So at least that is a good thing as well. But if we were to talk to you a year from today, now again, if we were to have talked to you a year ago and you would have predicted a global pandemic and everything that's gone down, I would have called you a liar and bet my entire life savings against it. So it goes to show how much we really know about what's going to happen. Who knows? I could be talking to you a year from now and there could be a fire in the background. You could hear gunshots in the background. Who knows where the world's going to be at with the way the last year went. But in an ideal world, where would you like to be at in your bodybuilding? Where would you like to be at in your overall life? What are some goals that you'd like to have achieved if we were to talk to you a year from today?
I would like to win Arnold 2021 and Olympia 2021. Those would be, two of my goals. I would love to be able to do that in the next year. Continue to inspire people. I think that's always a goal of mine. And as far as bodybuilding goes, I think that's pretty much it.
Hey, that
Win.
yeah, well, yeah, just like Al Davis, one of my favorite, just win, baby. But out of, I mean, all the things that you go through and stuff like that, I mean, I always love to give shout out to people at the end. So do you have anyone that you'd like to give a shout out to?
Yeah, my coach. His Instagram is Detail Bodybuilding. So I speak a lot about him, and I am where I am because of that, and because of his training, and because he took me under his wing almost 6 years ago now. So, and then my family, they're very, very supportive. Like I said, I have two sisters and my parents that support me. Unfortunately, with COVID, they weren't able to travel. All of them weren't able to come, but they travel with me to every show. They've been all over this world to see me. So
Oh my god, I actually forgot to ask you that, because that was a question that I love to ask too. Is what was your family's reaction when you first announced that you wanted to be a bodybuilder? Because it's not, for a lot of women's families, I mean, that's not something that they hear from their daughters quite often. So there, a lot of times, I find those reactions funny. But what was your family's reaction like when you announced them, like, oh hey, I would really want to do bodybuilding now?
So my family, I come from a family of fitness people. My sister is a Radio City Rockette. My younger sister is a dancer and actress out in LA. And funny enough, my parents actually live a bodybuilding lifestyle. My mom competed once I was in college, so maybe like 2004, 5. I just told you my age there. And then I don't care. And then so they started living like, so I had seen her compete, and this was before women even had multiple divisions. So when I said I wanted to compete, they were like, "Great, go for it. You'll be great at it." And in turn, they all now eat and train like bodybuilders. So I train both my sisters and their husbands, and my parents work with another trainer down in Florida. And funny enough, my mom ended up competing again 2 years ago at 63, I believe she was. So yeah,
We might have to get her on the podcast then. Good God, you want to talk about inspiration, but yeah, you might have told us your age, but I always say, you look like you're 25. So that's one of the benefits of working out. So it doesn't matter really, but yeah, that's
I'm
awesome.
36. I'll be 37 in less than a month.
Oh well. So wait, please don't tell me it's not on Valentine's Day.
No, 3 days later.
Okay, good.
17.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
I know.
Cause like
I got lucky.
I feel bad for the people that have birth. Cause like
Michael Jordan's birthday. He's a sports guy.
yeah. Well, like, and I have.
Michael Jordan.
Oh yeah, Michael Jordan. Okay, yeah, that's great. I share mine with Jesse the Body Ventura. I'm July 15th. That's the only celebrity that I really know, and he was the governor of Minnesota too. But yeah, I mean, I have an uncle that has a Christmas birthday, and I was like, oh, you poor thing. I mean, that's just to have a birthday on a holiday like that. But yeah, again, you guys, everyone, go and check out Jaclyn on her Instagram. I'll leave a link down below. You will be inspired to get off that couch and stop eating all those Twinkies and get in shape. But again, we cannot thank you enough for coming on and sharing your journey, and we wish you nothing but the best. And look forward to talking to you again. I mean, it was great to have you on.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure, Ryan.
Well, everyone, this is Ryan Johnson, DD on the spot, signing out. Have a great day, everyone.